WOL, Washington, D.C. W240DJ, Washington. 95.9 WMMJ, HD3, Bethesda. WKYS, HD3, Washington. WPRS, HD3, Waldorf, and worldwide at WOLDCnews.com.
All right. As you mentioned, Brother Neely Fuller is on deck at 5 after the top of the hour. Good morning, Neely Fuller. Happy New Year. And how are you doing, sir?
I'm still learning.
Love to hear that. And we're still learning. Folks, if you're out there, call up a couple of your friends. Tell them Neely Fuller is on the radio. They'll thank you for it. And again, you've got to listen very, very keenly to what Neely Fuller says. We try to dismantle the system of racism and white supremacy. Neely Fuller Jr. came up with the system of racism and white supremacy. How did you first identify that such a system of racism and white supremacy?
Simply by stumbling and fumbling and trying to figure out why the world is in such a mess and how to look at it and call whatever the mess is on the larger scale and what is causing it. I say that, everybody's complaining. You pick up a newspaper, a magazine, or turn on, going back as far as television that didn't exist, and you had radio, and you had newspapers, and they were talking about problems. People always said that, for the most part, most news is bad news. In the center of the worst type of news, it just was just staring you in the face. It's something about a thing called race. Everything that everybody brought up, everybody would just kind of go silent around the dinner table when the issue of race came up. And they say, well, what is this thing about race? I mean, it's conflict between dark-skinned people and the white people of the entire world. I mean, and Hitler's name would come up, and all types of names would come up. Henry Ford, what did he have to say about it? And very prominent people in the news, going back as far as anybody could think about, this thing called race and our racism. And sometimes blatantly they called it white supremacy, but very seldom. That's something that I came up on, that people use that term more. White supremacy. They'll say, well, the Republicans and the Democrats and conservatives and left wing and right wing. And I would look at everybody and say, well, they got thousands of words. Everybody's just throwing words around. Bigotry, discrimination. And I said, what term can you use, one size fits all? And everybody just go blank. In answer to the question, I say, white supremacy. I say, well, what is that? What is that? And it would get mentioned every now and then. Well, that's racism. And I say, well, why don't people just say that and stop fumbling around with all these other terms? Say right wing, left wing, right and left of what? Well, the center. What is the center? And I kept asking questions like that, and everybody would just go blank. The TV screen would practically go blank. Oh, don't go there. Don't go here. Just keep saying what you're saying. You keep saying what you're saying, you're not getting any results. You need to say something different, so that maybe we can stumble up on what the formula is for whatever the problems are. And once you do that, formulas mean just that. It's something in science and chemistry, I understand, once you come up with a formula, you don't deviate over the place and saying, well, we need a new word for formula. No, you don't. Just say formula. We need a new word for code. No, you don't. Just say code so that everybody will know what you're talking about and get used to it. You don't need to keep adding words or different ways of saying the same thing. To me, that caused confusion because now you're just grabbing at words, new words coming up every 5 minutes or every 2 or 3 months. And so that's how I came to the conclusion. Start saying the system of white supremacy. If you're talking about a major problem, the center of all of the problems on planet Earth, the system of white supremacy, and then you can put in parentheses racism. And racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. Don't deviate from it. Do that as a start if you're talking about solving problems. Otherwise, we just keep going around in circles and finding new ways, very ingenious ways, of saying the same thing. We don't need new ways of saying the same thing. We just need to get on the case of what is the problem and then solve it. And I came to the conclusion the greatest problem on the planet is the system of white supremacy. You solve that problem, and all other problems kind of fall in line.
All right. 11 minutes after the top of the hour, Mr. Parker wants to speak with you. He's got a question for you on line 2. Mr. Parker from D.C., you're on with Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Parker there?
Hello.
Yes, you're on the air, sir. Yes, you're on the air.
Yes. Okay, yes. Hello. Happy New Year, Dr. Fuller Jr. and Mr. Nelson. How is everyone today?
Well, I'm still learning.
Excellent. Dr. Fuller Jr., I have 2 questions and analysis on the system of racism and white supremacy. But first, I want to thank you for writing the United Independent Comprehensive Code System concept. Not only I read your book several times, but I also own this book along with Dr. Wilson's The ISIS Papers. I brought these books in 2018 at a yard sale. It is a 1984 edition with your business cards in them. I have not brought Addicted to White yet, but I will get it one day as it is suggested to me. I feel sorry for the brothers and sisters who have not read your books, and I feel really bad for the folks who read these catchy title books written by grifters who have no interest in dismantling or solving the system. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Continue. Your question.
The phone was beeping. Okay. In dismantling or solving the system of racism and white supremacy problem. These folks' personal ambitions are a disservice to all of us. They are a part of the problem. A while back, the topic in question was discussed about everyone, including white people like Joe Biden, are talking about racism and white supremacy. The question was, are all these people talking about white supremacy? Is their meaning, definition, and understanding the same as yours? And the answer is no. What you explained to us is factual, but what they're giving us is
You still there? All right, we got to keep moving. I think we lost Mr. Parker. Neely Fuller Jr., you want to respond to what he said? And he's correct about that. Before you and Dr. Wilson talked about racism, white supremacy, it wasn't in the lexicon. Now it's on Capitol Hill. The whole world is talking about racism, white supremacy. And he's basically saying that, is it the same definition that you use that we hear these politicians are now using today?
Well, you have to ask the person who is using the term. And that's one thing you have to be alerted to. You have to have detailed answers to the question. And whomever uses the term is the person who will define what it means. And that's any term, not only the system of white supremacy. The person who uses any term, and that's a part of what I write and a part of what I talk about. And that's any term. Like when people say right wing, you might talk for 10 hours just about that term alone. We have to pay attention to words. What do you mean right wing? Right of what? Well, right of left. Okay, but what do you mean by it? Say, well, that means blah, 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 and then you have to listen very carefully to the answers that you get when people say that they're answering a question, because many times, I'll say even most times, I'll venture to do that, people will say that they're giving you a description of what they're saying, but now you have to ask another question. What does that mean when they give you the definition of what they're saying?
And hold that thought right there, Neely Fuller Jr. We got to take a short break here. We got to take I hate to interrupt you. We got to take the traffic and weather in our different cities. That you finish, come back and tell us about how to define if the definition that racism, white supremacy is being used by others now is the same as what you used and Dr. Wilson used as well. If you want to join this conversation, reach out to us, 800-450-7876. We'll get you in. Your calls in 4 minutes on 1010 WOLB in Baltimore. Also in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 14. WOL, where information is power.
Now back to the Carl Nelson Show.
Good morning once again, family. 22 minutes after the top of the hour. Thanks for rolling with us this morning. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. We're discussing racism, white supremacy. You know his tone. He says, if you don't understand how the system of racism, white supremacy works and all that it entails, then everything else that you think you understand will only serve to confuse you. And just give you a warning. You got to listen very, very keenly. So this is not one of these programs that you can listen with one ear and do something else. Get your ear locked into that speaker, because you got to, Neely Fuller uses logic, cause and effect to prove his points. Before we left for the break, we were speaking with a Mr. Parker, who wanted to know if the use of racism, white supremacy we hear now, it's on Capitol Hill. We hear the president's talking about it. All these lawmakers are talking about it. Is it the same version that he and Dr. Wilson talked about? And I think Mr. Parker's back with us on line 2. Mr. Parker, you want to finish your question for Neely Fuller Jr.?
Yes, and thank you for bringing me back. But let me make this quick. Dr. Fuller, your factual 1971 statement about the white supremacist system and the 9 areas that it controls has been, and the manipulation of words, the white supremacists have managed to make these facts more confusing and extremely complex. He has even recruited tens of thousands of our own people to help spread this confusion, a distorted version of what his system really is, and to promote his destructive ideas, plans, and policies to make them more acceptable to black people. And the latest example is Drag Queen Story Hour. What the black mayor of New York City, not going to say his name, he's defending this, saying it's okay to gear this towards elementary school children. And even with the term, it's no longer a system anymore. Like you explained to us, it's a system that affects our areas, but what they've done, they just reduced it to a derogatory and slanderous terms to use for anybody they disagree with, whether it's Trump, the Republicans, MAGA, whoever. But and the 9 areas that affects our lives, a lot of them have been eliminated because on some of those areas that the Democratic Party controls, like entertainment, labor, some of those areas that affect us, it's been eliminated. But my question to you, Dr. Fuller Jr., with the message you've been giving us, which is accurate, but the people who control the microphone, the people who control the social media, the mainstream media, I'm not talking about right-wing media, I'm talking about mainstream media, all these, the Hollywood, the celebrities, all these people that given the distorted, perverted version of what the system, racism, white supremacy is, and including the use of our own people. Like recently, a sister of ours was fired from MSNBC from her show to come on 10 a.m. And while she gives the illusion that she is a strong black woman to talk about white supremacy, but she too promotes the oppressor's policies, and she even calls black people who disagree with homosexuality and
right. Mr. Parker, can you get to the question? We don't want to talk about anybody else and anybody's show. You can do that with them.
No,
what is your question for Neely Fuller Jr.?
No, I didn't say names. But what I'm saying is, how can we amplify Dr. Fuller Jr.'s definition, correct definition of the system, racism, white supremacy? Because all the folks.
Okay, we got the gist of it. Thank you, Mr. Parker. Neely Fuller Jr., he says, how can we amplify your version? He says right now the version is being skewed by other folks out there.
Using it. That's why I wrote the book, which he says that he has, I think. And so all he has to do is just use it. Now, most of the book consists of doing what? Asking questions, like we're doing right now, asking questions. The laws of the universe is that, the way I see it, I could be incorrect. Every problem that is ever solved or ever will be solved by people is solved through the process of questions and answers. Questions and answers about what? About everything. About a leaf on a tree. You ask every possible question that you can ask about one leaf on one tree, and don't move to the second question about that leaf until you get the answer to the first question about that leaf. I just put that out there as an illustration. Once you latch on to anything that you have a question about, don't turn loose. Just be ready with the next question. And don't argue about the first questions that you get. That's another thing. People get what you might call, quote, unquote, bogged down and start arguing about the answers that you get to the first question. No, the logical procedure is you just stick with the first question and ask questions about that first question until you get the answer, because every question has an answer. It's just a matter of sticking with it and finding it out. Question number one, get the answer to question number one. Then you have question number two, get the answer, the answer. Not just say anything, but come up with the answer. I mean, the one answer. Because every question has one answer. That is the answer to that question. It's a very simple formula. But people have a tendency to then let their personalities get involved in the question and answering and start saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, you find out whether the person knows what they're talking about by having more questions and more answers. It never fails. Questions and answers in problem solving, that's the procedure. That's the codified procedure. That's the logic. These are the laws of the universe. It has nothing to do with personalities. You don't have to get into name calling and who knows more than the other person. You'll find that out by the procedure of question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, and never, ever move to the second question until the first question is answered. Why? Logically speaking, because you'll get confusion if you do that. Moving on to that second question, then the third question, then the fourth question. By the time you get to the fourth or fifth question, you got confusion already. Why? You didn't take care of answering the first question that's attached to the second question. That first question has to be answered. Doesn't make any difference how long it takes. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere, or you're going everywhere and coming right back to the same thing 50 years later. And that's how the racists are experts in doing that. They'll start off talking about something, the white supremacists, they're very skilled at that. And 50 years later, you'll wind up going over that same ground because that answer was not given to that first question that was asked 50 years ago. They say, we'll get back to that. No, it doesn't work like that. I mean, you're dropping your answer right there with that first question. The laws of the universe says there is an answer, the answer to every question. It's just a matter of you don't move on to that second question before that first question is answered. And everybody understands the answer because the white supremacists are highly skilled at sounding like they're answering a question when they're really not. They're making more confusion by infusing other words and distorting even your question so that you wind up not knowing what you're talking about yourself. This is how a master at deception operates. They first cause confusion. And the confusion is they don't give straight answers to a straight-up question, but they know how to appear to be given an answer. Watch out for that.
Well, let me jump in here, Neely Fuller Jr. I was going to ask you that question too. How do you know the reply, the answer you get, is the answer, or is it that you are seeking something, a response, and it may be not the response that you're seeking, and you say that's not the right answer? How does that work?
Well, when it doesn't work, it depends on what you started out trying to do. That's the essential thing. I haven't said that, but first of all, you have to make it very clear to yourself, what is it that I am trying to do? And that comes down to what I have in the textbook, the 4 wants. WANTS. It's 4 questions that are attached to what people want. Or creatures want. Squirrels, alligators, elephants, a bee, birds. Every creature, while it's breathing, wants something every minute of the day that creature is conscious, meaning awake, meaning not asleep or dead. Every creature. Now, what are those 4 wants? In the form of questions. Because everything is about a question and an answer.
Right. Now, tell you what, hold that thought right there, because we'll come up on a break, and I'll let you give us those 4 wants that we need to know about. But it's 27 minutes away from the top of the hour, folks. We've got to take a short break. You got questions for Neely Fuller Jr., reach out to us. You can dial us up at 800-450-7876 to get in. We'll take your calls. As we mentioned, it's 27 away. We'll take your calls in 4 minutes in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. Good morning once again, family. 20 minutes away from the top of the hour with our guest, Neely Fuller Jr., discussing racism and white supremacy. Most of you already know his tome on the subject. If you got a question, reach out to us at 800-450-7876. Before we get back, tomorrow's Friday. This is where we give you a chance to free your mind, think for yourself, and join us for another edition of Open Phone Friday. We begin promptly at 6 a.m. in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB, also in the DMV, same time on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL. Neely Fuller Jr., you said there were 4 wants. You're about to refer to these 4 wants, explaining how the system of racism and white supremacy works. So I'll let you go ahead and do that.
Okay, one way to solve problems, because that's what we're talking about. We came into the world with problems. Babies come into the world crying. They don't come into the world laughing, except maybe on some very strange occasion. The average baby comes into the world crying. There's a reason for that. The baby, even before its mind begins to work, the baby can sense things. Like we have 5 senses, they say. Hunger, pain, That's stealing and whatnot. So babies come into the world crying. Why? Because the baby senses that there's going to be a problem, because the world is full of problems. And I think, and this is just a theory of mine, why is it that babies come into the world crying and not laughing? It's because the baby, even before the mind begins to work, their feelings pick up. Things are out of order. I am not in a pleasant environment. That's what the baby is saying when it cries out. So getting to the point of the question now. So a person, the whole time you're on the planet, and I have this on page 171 and 172 of the textbook for victims of white supremacy that you can get by going to producejustice.com. Every day, all day, wherever you are, ask yourself, start with yourself, these 4 basic questions. And this is an answer to the question about the wants. Number 1, what do I want to do? Because whether you ask that of anybody else or not, you start with yourself. Everybody wants to do something. Everybody has wants. Those wants now are connected, don't forget this, with problem solving. Because no matter how it may look on the surface, what you're doing when you want something, you are trying to solve a problem. But you may not even call it a problem. It's just getting something done. Well, getting something done is problem solving. So you ask yourself, you talk to yourself when you get up in the morning. That's the first person you talk to. What do I want to do? And you can get an answer right quick. If you want to get up out of that bed, that's something you want to do. So that's the first thing you want to do. That's why logic says you're asking this question all the time, until you finally go to sleep. What do I want to do? So that's the first question. Question number 2, why do I want to do what I want to do? There's a reason why you want to get out of that bed. So you know the reason I want to get out of this bed, because if I don't get out of this bed, I'm going to be late for work. And if I'm late for work, bad things are going to happen. See, so that gets into the problem-solving thing right there. That's why you're rushing around. You're not rushing around because you just feel like you need to exercise. You want to get to work. Why? Because if you don't get to work and you keep doing that, somebody's going to tell you, don't bother coming to work because you don't work here anymore. So you want to solve that problem. What do I want to do? Number 2, why do I want to do what I want to do? Number 3, how do I plan to do what I want to do? And number 4, what do I expect the constructive result to be? Now you ask yourself those 4 questions. And then you get in the habit of asking those 4 questions to anybody else that you talk to. And don't argue about the answers that you get. These are 4 universal questions that will work every time in solving every problem. You may not think so, but that's one of the last things I put into the textbook, because I stumbled upon that formula by asking questions. And I said, what are the 4 things, or the 5 things, or the 10 things that people gravitate to or will help to solve a problem? I was trying to find a formula for doing that. I think that I've stumbled upon it. It has to do with wants, because every creature wants something. I keep repeating that. So if you're talking to anybody about any subject, you can just start off with that, and you can try it to see if it works, because I've found that it works. I mean, it just works. I mean, it's just a law of the universe. It's not Boyle's law. I stumble upon it in a way to express it, but it works every time. That's why I call it a part of the code, because codification of any kind, when you say you have a code for something, like a key code, or you have a code when you go to the bank and you punch your number in for your debit card, that's a code. So what do you mean by code? It means every time you do it, it works. Otherwise, it's not code. Now, we need a code for all of the problems that we have. So it's just a matter of finding out what that code is, because every time you do it, it's going to work. Otherwise, you can't call it a code. A barcode when you go to the grocery store. So you codify wants, because every creature wants something. Now you become real educated real fast just with those 4 questions. Find out what every creature, every person wants. Why they want it. How do they plan to get what they want? And then that last question, what do you expect the constructive result to be? Now that's something that every black person can ask themselves and should. And when they talk to another black person, should ask those 4 things before you get into anything else. Get that straight first. Because when you find out what people want, people will do just about anything to get what they want. They might lie. They might say that they want something when they really don't. And people lie to themselves a lot. I found that out. I found that out just examining myself. I lie to myself. I'll say that I want something when I really don't. And I find that out, like I want to buy something. I think that I wanted to buy it. I think I wanted to have it. And I bought it. And I had it. But did I really want it? Did I really want it myself? Or did I get it because somebody else suggested that that's what I ought to have? So you can fool yourself about your wants, and that is extremely dangerous. So the first thing you do, you be honest with yourself. And when you ask someone else that, sometimes they're lying to themselves about what they want, and then they lie to you. They'll pretend that they want something. They're talking to you. They want one thing from you, when really they want something else from you. But they're going a roundabout way of doing it. That's why I say you get the truth about what everybody wants, and that'll take everybody right where they should be when you get answers to those 4 questions. That is a guarantee. You may not get the answers that you were looking for, but you're going to get the answers if you keep answering those 4 questions. If you don't believe it, try it. If everybody can remember or get the book and look at that, you ask yourself those 4 questions first. Then you ask anybody else in any setting, whether you're at work, your supervisor. Sir, ma'am, what do you want me to do? You're talking about wants here. And they'll tell you, they'll say, your supervisor, well, what I want you to do is not be late for work. How about that? Like you have been doing for the last 6 days. Start with that. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? Because if it's worth doing at all, you should have some type of plan. Even if you're going to break out of prison, you should have a plan. Otherwise, your prison break is most likely going to fail right from the first move you make, because you didn't plan the first move. So the second one is not going to even happen anyway, because you're not going to get as far as the wall. Then that third question, how do I plan to do what I want to do? Got to have a plan. And then the fourth one is the real important question. Of course, all of them are important. What do I expect the constructive result to be if I do what I want? That young black person's putting that pistol in his belt. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do what you want to do? You got that pistol in your belt. Now you're going out into the street. How do you plan to do what it is that you want to do with that pistol? Now you must have some plan, because you got it in your belt. And you're walking out of this house with it. A gun, 9mm, 21 bullets.
Right. Hold that thought right there, Neely Fuller Jr. Hold that thought right there. We got to take a quick break and check the traffic and weather in our different cities. I want you to expound on that, too, when we come back, because the issues of black people killing black people, especially our young brothers, explain some people are confused of why they're doing it. If you can explain that to us, because I know you used the analogy that we're all in a prison, and if you can explain that to our audience, I'd appreciate it. Folks, it's 6 minutes away from the top of the hour. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. You got questions on this racism and white supremacy, Tom? Reach out to us. Our telephone number is 800-450-7876. By the way, you got to listen very, very keenly, because he uses logic, cause and effect to prove his points, which he'll do when we get back in 4 minutes in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB, and also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Keep rocking.
And good morning once again, family. A minute after the top of the hour, our guest, Neely Fuller Jr. And folks, you're out there, you got to listen very, very keenly to Neely Fuller's presentation, because he always uses logic, cause and effect to prove his points. Got some friends out there. Call them up and tell them to turn on the radio. Neely Fuller is on the radio and explain a lot of things that you probably have questions about. And before we left, he was giving us the story about a young man packing a pistol. Well, that's part of it. But also, we have each other attacking each other. There's a reason why we attack each other, and Neely Fuller's about to explain it to us. Because sometimes and it's not necessarily with a pistol. It can be on the internet. It can be with words. It can be in the pulpit. It can be all over. There's a reason why we attack it. Some people say we've been programmed to hate each other. We've been programmed to attack each other. We don't attack the oppressor, but we attack each other. So Neely Fuller Jr., can you explain all of that for our audience, please? Thank you.
Well, if that's the question, why do black people attack each other? It's because prisoners of war or prisoners of any kind realize that they're helpless. Black people are helpless, meaning we can't give ourselves much help. We can't depend on each other. We can't depend on ourselves to do much of anything, because we were born in prison. The name of that prison is the system of white supremacy. Call it that. Stop calling it by any other name. Racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. There's no other form of racism other than white supremacy. Now, we have to get that straight first in your mind. Then you say, what is this thing called white supremacy? It's people who are classified as white who have made a decision that they're going to dominate and mistreat people who are classified, and they did the classifying, the white supremacists, as non-white. Black, brown, red, yellow, any person who has color in his or her skin is considered a person who is not white. And so the white supremacists, the white people who made the decision, logically speaking, they're the usual suspects. They were white people, first of all, who made the decision that it's an excellent idea to permanently do all of the world's business on the basis of what color someone's skin is. It's a very powerful idea, the most powerful political and religious idea ever thought up. That's why it's the dominant religion and the dominant political system, dominant and the greatest, according to the evidence, that the world has ever seen. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, all of these major religions, not to say anything about the hundreds of tribal religions, but Confucianism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all of these religions put together, according to Neely Fuller? No, according to the evidence. All of these religions put together, I'm going to repeat that. All of these political systems put together, so-called communism, capitalism, royalism, socialism, none of these isms are as strong as the political system and the religious system called the system of white supremacy. It's the greatest motivating force among the people of planet Earth that was ever invented. And it is the strongest motivating force right now. We're not talking about ancient times. It's never lost its strength since the day that it began. So we say that. That's a part of getting to the truth, because that's either true or false. And everything should be tested for the truth. No matter who says it, Neely Fuller or anybody else. Test it. Find something stronger than the system of white supremacy when it comes to motivating people. I know of nothing like that. Nothing. I haven't seen any evidence, not one shred of evidence of anything being stronger. No religion, no political system, no economic system, educational system, entertainment system, labor, law, politics, whatever religion, or war, or sex. The white supremacists dominate what people think about sex more than anybody. That's why they can slip and slide and change the definition of sex overnight without asking anybody anything. Just do it. And everybody just bows down and falls right in line. They'll say, well, male, female, that's old-fashioned. That's out of style. And everybody says, what? What are you talking about? Say, what did I say? See, when the white supremacists speak, everybody listens. I don't care what kind of preacher they are or whatever. What your religion is, what your politics are. The most powerful force. So when you're dealing with the most powerful force on the planet, and that most powerful force is designed to mistreat people, it's an evil force. And that's why young black people, you could trace it to the white supremacists. If you're looking for the culprits, if you're looking for the usual suspects, you can say that without even half asleep, half drunk, or whatever you are. You can say whatever is happening on this planet called Earth that shouldn't be happening, the white supremacists are in control of it. Why? Because they're the smartest and most powerful people on the planet, and there is no evidence at all of anything that contradicts what I just said. Because people listening to this program right now and hear me say that, First thing they should say is Neely Fuller telling the truth? Or is he lying? Or is he confused? And he's saying things that are not true out of ignorance. Because I'm either doing that or I'm telling the truth. The system of white supremacy is the greatest motivating force among all people, white and non-white, everywhere on planet Earth, right this minute in the year 2023. The strongest motivating force in every area of activity. And it's an evil force. That's why I have on the back of the book, you can't solve any major problem until you get rid of racism. I don't care what that problem is. That problem is going to stick with you in one form or another. That's why young black people are slaughtering each other, no matter how many love-ins we claim we have.
And hold that thought right there, Neely Fuller, Jim, because there's a story, that.
Yes, it's going to continue as long as we have the system of white supremacy, and that's what they want.
All right, explain, because especially for our listeners in Baltimore, there's a shooting at a school in Baltimore on Wednesday. 5 people got shot, 1 a fatality. The school's closed this morning, and the police are still investigating. That's near Edmondson Village Shopping Center, and the school, West Side High School, is closed this morning. 5 people got shot, 1 fatality, as I mentioned. Explain to the audience now, when they hear a story like that, how does that connect to racism and white supremacy?
You just lean back and yawn and say, the white supremacists again, because they have control of our minds. They have control of Neely Fuller's mind. That's why Neely Fuller's on the air right now talking about white supremacy. All roads lead to the white supremacists, every last one of them. I don't care what kind of religion you got or think you have. It ain't personal. It's business. And everybody who's on whatever it is that they're getting back to that want again, whatever you want. If you're on this planet and you're black, you're going to be dealing with somebody white. If what you want is anything that has to do with the actions of people, either directly or indirectly. And that includes all of the black people on the planet who have never even seen or heard of a white person, because they're so back into the forest or someplace. They have a tribe of 300 or 400 people that have never been, quote unquote, discovered. But they are dominated by the white supremacists. Why? Because the white supremacists can walk into that village and take it over in 5 minutes. And that village has been nice and quiet, and people that's going through their routine for 2,000 years. They've never even seen a white person, or any other person for that matter. They've been isolated. But they're going to get a wake-up call when the first white person walks in there. All of a sudden, that white person shows up at 7 o'clock in the morning, by 4 o'clock that evening, by the racist clock. Everything in that village will change. Why? The white supremacists are the greatest magicians ever that this world has ever seen. Those white people that you're looking at every day, they are like magic, even though they don't seem that way. That's a part of the magic. They say, them white folks that I work with, man, they're some of the dumbest people. How'd you get in position to say that? Because some white folks taught you how not to be dumb. If you're black on this planet, black people, we got to start telling the truth, see, to ourselves, and stop lying. Black lives matter. Black lives matter? Is there any evidence of that anywhere? Black lives don't matter to black people. That's one thing that really doesn't matter. Out of everything, I mean, flies matter more than black people. 2 black people. Our brains are just that messed up. when we see a black person, deep down, we have been trained to want to, what is that? That's something to kill. You know, that's something ain't supposed to be walking around in the subway station. You kill it. And you're black yourself. And that's what you're telling yourself with that gun in your waistband. Who are you going to kill? Has anybody asked you that? There's plenty of black people walking around with guns in their waistband, right? Yeah. You know who you're going to kill. You know who you've been trained to kill. You've been very careful to see to it you don't kill the incorrect person, because you don't want nothing bad to happen to you real quick. That's why you haven't completely lost your mind. You're going to be very selective, and we are. Black people don't even notice the world around them as a whole. We only pay attention to what? Each other. And ignorant people, watching ignorant people, are not going to learn very much of any value except ignorance.
Right. And hold that thought right there, Neely Fuller Jr. I've got to take another short break and check the traffic and weather in our different cities. Folks, you want to join this conversation, Neely Fuller Jr., reach out to us at 800-450-7876 at 15 minutes after the top of the hour. We'll take your calls in 4 minutes in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. In the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Career.
And good morning once again, family. 21 minutes after the top of the hour. Thanks for rolling with us this morning on this first week of 2023. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr., and has been teaching us this morning. If you want to know something, put in a question for him. So let's go to Marvin in Baltimore. Marvin, your question for Neely Fuller Jr.
How y'all doing this morning? Hello?
Yes, your question for Mr. Fuller.
Hello? Hello?
One more time. All right, Marvin, goodbye. He's not ready.
I'm here, man. God damn.
No, stop cursing, man. This is, hey, we don't do this on this program. You can hear when I told you goodbye, but you couldn't hear me before. Now, what is your question for Neely Fuller? Okay, Kevin, he's gone. We gotta get rid of him. I'm sorry, and I apologize for him to be cursing like that, especially for our friends in Baltimore. They're not all not like that. Anyway, the tweet, Neely Fuller Jr., is for you. As I mentioned, the questioner says that our culture is being stolen and appropriated by others, and we're doing what we see the other people do, taking away our power to punish our children, which has led to destruction. The person wants to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I can have a lot of thoughts about it, but I'll just say what the code says, just with what I was just given, because that's the procedure. Our culture, that's one thing that was mentioned in the question, and punishing, I heard the word punish. Our offspring, no, according to logic, compensatory counter-racist logic, they're already being punished like we're being punished. We're children. Anytime someone reduces you to a prisoner of war status, you've been made into a child. So you got a child punishing a child when you're being punished yourself? No. You try to improve the status of yourself and your offspring. And how do you do that? Questions and answers, because that problem solves. You talk to your offspring. You don't punish them. You don't beat them. Now, there's a saying, spare the rod, spoil the child. That's an old saying. And there's a lot of old sayings. When I was in elementary school, they say that you teach a person, taught to the tune of you got reading, writing, and arithmetic, taught to the tune of a hickory stick. And that was a standard saying. Teachers in public schools used to beat the child, but that led to problems with the parents of the child. Sometimes the parents of the child, truth be told, would show up at the school and have a physical altercation with the teacher who whipped their child. Said, "You don't whip my child." And so I think that they used to call it corporal punishment, but they stopped that. So if you really want to do the correct thing by your offspring, be ready to answer all the questions that they ask, because that's where the conflict starts, not only with young people, but with any people. People get frustrated when their questions are not answered in a logical manner, so that they get the logic of the universe that they're going to be in, even when you're long gone. That's what you want to do, prepare their minds. They say, well, you prepare their minds by whipping their behinds, but no, that makes brutes out of them. There are a lot of black people who were taught, shut up, boy, don't answer too much, don't ask so many questions. Shut up, don't ask questions. That is absolutely incorrect to tell anybody anything, because if there's going to be solutions to problems, or what we call progress, it's always through the process. No exceptions now. This is a part of the code, and I'm not turning loose to it because the evidence bears it out. Yet answers to questions. How many questions? As many as it takes to get the correct answer. And this is universal. So you start there, telling, once that child asks a question, Mama, how come it's not any white children in my class? Now, if you don't know the answer to the question, that's a signal. A signal of what? Find out the answer. Find out the answer. That's a question. You don't turn loose to a question. You find the answer to that question. And you definitely do it with someone younger than you who is asking you the question, or someone older than you. It doesn't have anything to do with age. The answer to a question is the answer to that question, regardless of whom it comes from, or regardless of who it is that asked the question. That's the procedure. And you answer the question truthfully. And if you can't answer the question in such a way that the person understands your answer, tell that person, this is the codified procedure. You'll get back to them when you figure out how to answer the question in a way that they understand what you're saying, because you definitely don't want to spread misunderstanding anywhere on this planet ever again. You don't want to be a part of that. So you just say, I don't know how to answer that question right now. I'll get back to you when I know how to answer that question.
Right. And Neely Fuller Jr., you've often said that we talk too much. Sometimes we should not just have conversations. We just have conversations to have conversations. Really, we have nothing to say to each other, just idle chatter. Can you explain that to the audience for us?
It leads to conflict. It's very simple. Idle chat and what we call idle talk leads to conflict. We don't need any more conflict. So anytime you talk to somebody, it should be about problem solving. And the minute the problem is solved, you disappear from the scene, and they disappear from you. That should be a part of the black code. We don't talk nonsense, ever. We don't talk just to be talking, because we can't stand silence. See, I can understand that when you're locked up in a prison. People want to talk about anything. That's why prisons are so noisy. You know that prisoners are really thinking, or they are dying, when everything is silent. So usually, from what people have told me, who have been in what you call the prisons where people mingle all day, they say it's constant noise. And so the people who are around this, just people saying anything, any kind of old way, a fight starts here and then breaks up, and then it starts there and breaks up. Because people who are helpless, that's what they do. And they just say something just to be saying something. Black people got to get out of that prison mentality, saying something just to be saying something. Passing time. Time is passing through you. You're given time. When you're born, you're given two things, time and energy. And you're supposed to be using every ounce of energy and every fraction of a second to do what? Solve problems. Now, why would Neely Fuller say that? That the reason we're here is to solve problems. Because we have problems. And once you solve one problem, you move on to what? The next problem. And then the next problem. And you say, well, when do you have a good time? You have a good time solving problems. That is a good time. That's the best time. It's the most wonderful way to use time. Problem solving. And you know that's what you're here for because you've got problems. Whatever created you could have created you with no problems. Whatever created you could have created you with no problems. So if you got problems, it's because the Creator assigned you problems to solve. Some people at a basic level understand that. That's why you have crossword puzzles in the back of newspapers. Because they know a few people like solving problems. But black people have been taught, try to run away from problems. And it doesn't work. Because there's nowhere to run.
All right, 28 away from the top of the hour. And, we'll come up on a break real soon. And we'll also want you to give out the 9 years of activity that you talk about in your book. And also want to find out how we can get copies of your book. So let's start tell us about the 9 years of activity first. And then in between, we'll take the break for the news, traffic, and weather update. Neely Fuller Jr.
Yes. People are engaged directly and indirectly all day long, every day, if they're breathing, in one or more areas of activity, and collectively, they are, each minute of each day, involved in all 9 areas of activity, if you're black and you're on planet Earth. So I'm going to list them in alphabetical order. There are 9 major areas of activity.
Right. Now, I'll tell you what, hold that thought there, because I don't want to break your rhythm, because we got a break coming up. We've got to check the news, traffic, and weather in our different cities. And when we come back, I'll let you run down the 9 areas. Folks, as you two can get in on this conversation with Neely Fuller Jr., reach out to us at 800-450-7876. And I keep saying, you've got to listen very, very keenly to what Neely Fuller is doing. This is a teaching effort now. You can't listen to one ear. You got to put 2 ears in there. And probably some of you got questions probably really don't understand, because as he says, if you don't understand how the system of racism and white supremacy works, then everything else that you think you understand only serves to confusion. We got a lot of confused folks out here, so please listen keenly when Neely Fuller speaks. As I mentioned, we're going to take the break and check what the news, traffic, and weather in our cities. We'll be back in 4 minutes right here in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. In the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Now back to the Carl Nelson Show.
And good morning once again, family. 20 minutes away from the top of the hour. Neely Fuller Jr. We're discussing the code. We're discussing racism, white supremacy. He's written a book about this. Before he leaves, I'll make sure that he tell you how you can get a copy of the book. Before we go back to him, though, just want to remind you that tomorrow is Friday, and we're again inviting you to free your mind, think for yourself, and reach out to us on our Open Phone Friday program. We start promptly at 6 on 1010 WOLB in Baltimore, also in the DMV on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. Neely Fuller Jr., you're about to tell us the 9 areas of activity. When you finish that, Michael in Columbus has a question for you.
Yes, the 9 areas of activity, according to, I think they're adequate. And I have the book that I have written that you can get by going to producejustice.com. The book is segmented into 9 areas of activity with definitions for those 9 areas, by the way. And the first one is economics in alphabetical order, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And every person on the planet, minute by minute, is engaged in one or more of those areas of activity, and directly, indirectly, engaged in all of those areas of activity, directly or indirectly, all the time. Every person that is breathing is engaged in something dealing with economics. Basic economics is just not about money, but time and energy. How you use your time, how you use your energy. Everybody who is breathing, which is energy and time, just breathing. You're using time to breathe. And breathing is energy. So you got the two. Every creature and every person. That's economics. Because economics is all about use of time and energy. If you're not using time and energy, that's not economics. Education is the process of learning everything about everything. That's why there's no such thing as an educated person. See, it's a new way of looking at the same thing, because that's how you make what they call progress, and that's how problems are solved. Looking at the same thing, but looking at it in a different way. Everything is, the whole universe has been here. It's been here and been here and been here. But you look at the moon, and your mind begins to go in such a way that you don't think about the moon the way that you thought about it 2,000 years ago. Because whomever was on this planet 2,000 years ago, as far as I know, those people weren't traveling to the moon. The moon was the moon 2,000 years ago. It's just there it is. Everybody looked at it. People were mystified by it. See, that's where the mind starts working. But some people's minds went in the direction of asking a question, because that's where everything starts, and getting an answer. What is that? That's the first question. I wonder if I can go there. That's another question. But before they went to that second question, they had to get an answer to the first question. What is that thing? What is it? It seems like it's just hanging there. And that other thing that's further away, but it's real hot. You can't even look at it. What's the difference between the two? Well, one you can look at, and one, when you look at it, it hurts your eyes. Somebody asked those questions. Next thing you know, by people asking questions and getting answers, some people, of course, some people say that they don't believe it, even now, but some people white people went to one of those places called the moon. Right here during the time that Neely Fuller is in existence, when people for thousands of years said there was no way to get there. Forget about that. I mean, you moonstruck. You've got some ideas in your mind about how you can get there. You can't even get there, not think about getting back. But somebody did it. Why? Because somebody thought of doing it. Everything starts with a thought. And once you get a thought, what is that thought? A question. And what did I say at the beginning of this program? Every problem that's ever been solved or ever will be solved starts with a question. And you get an answer to that question, which brings on another question that brings on another answer to that question. And you do that in all 9 areas of activity. That's how you become educated. And there's no such thing as a complete education until all questions have been asked and all questions have been answered correctly.
All right. 14 away from the top of that. As I mentioned, Michael's in Columbus, Ohio, has got a question for you. Michael, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Well, you said it earlier, you and Carl, to repair ourselves. And that's what we need to do. And we need to start with ourselves and start with the churches where they started at. We need to get these churches to start having talks about what has happened to us. Why do we think and trust this oppressor, the liar, who has taught us these lies, and we continue to fester these lies? We live under their lies of law and hatred. We need to start even with power talk. Take an hour or so and a half for us to get out there and to discuss what has happened to us mentally. Why do we trust our oppressor? How do we get out and take our lives back and expose this liar? But it needs to start in that church where they started. It starts right there where our strongest institution is, in that religious belief. We took on their God, took on their way.
Michael, do us a favor. Put in a question for him because we're racing the clock right here.
All right, that is my question. Can we, at your Power Talk and across the globe, start repair centers and start talking about what you're saying, logic, but don't be afraid to address that church where they started at with religion. They took the gold and left us to believe in their God and their lies.
All right. Thanks, Michael. The question is for me, but we'll talk about that later. Right now, Neely Fuller is the guest. Neely Fuller, you want to comment on what he said?
Well, he mentioned churches, and churches have to do with religion. And one thing, you don't argue about religion. That's why I wrote the book. That's the seventh area of activity, religion. And I've said on this program today, the strongest religion is the religion of white supremacy. So that's what you start with. There's no religion. Now, I'm either telling the truth or I'm not. There isn't a religion on planet Earth in the year 2023 that is stronger than the religion of white supremacy. What is a religion? A religion, first of all, is a strong belief backed up by action. You got to have those two elements in order to have a religion. It's not a religion if it's not a strong belief backed up by action. See, you can walk around with all kind of beliefs in your head, but you don't back it up. If it has something to do with something you're supposed to be doing and you're not doing it, you don't have that religion. That's any religion. If you're talking about the definition of religion. Churches have something to do with religion. Religion is nothing but a strong belief backed up by action. The white supremacists have a strong belief. They believe in dominating and mistreating non-white people. And they back it up by action. They don't fail to do that. And they do it 24/7 in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. They dominate the non-white people of planet Earth here in the year 2023 in all 9 areas of activity. So that makes them have the strongest religion. People walk around and talk about what religion they got, but when the white supremacists come around, everything in their religion disappears if the white supremacists say, hey, I'm not paying any attention to what you say about nothing. You're going to do what I say. You can believe anything you want to believe, but you are going to do with your dark skin what I tell you to do, and that's been proven to be true over and over and over again. That's why I'm on this program today. I'm dealing with the strongest religion on earth.
All right. And Neely Fuller Jr., how can we get copies of your book?
You can go to producejustice.com. And a description of what the book is about is right there at that website. Producejustice.com.
And I think we have a line open. Kevin, can you close that line one? I'm hearing some feedback there. Neely Fuller Jr., Neely Fuller Jr., the title of the book?
It's called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, but a simpler title is also on the cover of the book. It's a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, white supremacy. Racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. There's no other form of racism other than white supremacy, because you can't have 2 supremes in the same space at the same time. That's not
unless
logical.
It's the singers. Unless it's the singing group, right?
Yes, unless you're talking about a singing group. Now you can have 4 or 5 supremes. But in racism, you just got one supremacy. People sometimes talk about black supremacy. And so I ask a question, because everything is about questions and answers. Where do you find it? On planet Earth in the year 2023, which is where we are now. Do you have a place anywhere on planet Earth where black people are telling white people what to do and they better do it? Not one place. So there's no such thing as black supremacy. There are some people who say that black is supreme. There's no proof of that anywhere. None. Zero. They'll say, well, I've seen black supervisors, practically cuss a white person out and work for the same company. Well, who's telling that black supervisor what to do? Duh. If you track it down, it's always somebody white. Always. Always. No exceptions.
All right. Neely Fuller Jr., thank you. I got some tweets. People said that you went really deep. They appreciate the scholarship this morning, so I just want you to know that you're appreciated by our listeners. All right. Thank you, Neely Fuller Jr.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you and I hope that I didn't cause more confusion and then I clear it up. But you can go to producejustice.com and get my textbook. And the next time I talk, if it's my creator's willing, I'm invited to Mr. Carl Nelson's show, and I thank Mr. Carl Nelson. I thank all the callers, and you're not beholden to agree with anything that I said, but think about it. I have to tell people that. Doubt everything that I say. Yes, doubt everything that I say, and then test it yourself and see if it's true.
That's the key. Test it yourself. Thank you, Neely Fuller Jr.
Thank you again. Thank you.
All right, we're out of here. Stay strong. Stay positive. Please stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock in Baltimore on 1010 WOLB. In the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.